Today, my guest will help you to communicate your business ideas and plans in a way that will get you results.
If I've got a really busy diary and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, how am I actually going to deliver all of that? I'm overwhelmed. Inevitably, I'll get a phone call or someone will message me and say, look, that workshop that you're delivering next week for us, could we postpone it for a month or so? I'm like, yes, of course you can.
In order to fully embrace life's tapestry, all you need is to trust.
One of the things that I find very comforting for myself, and I know a lot of people can't do this, but I just trust. I just trust. I trust that everything will work out.
My guest is Mel Sherwood, and she's going to share how she handles the uncertainties of life so you too can. Mel, you started out life as a marketing communications expert, but since then you've transitioned to become a speaker, trainer, and coach on confident presentation skills, pitching, and public speaking. What were the reasons behind those career transitions, Mel?
Well, if you go back even further, I actually started life as an actor. So I studied performing arts and I worked as an actor and a singer a little bit in Australia.
Very good.
And one of the transitions was, so then I went into marketing because I worked for a big retailer in Australia alongside my acting work so that I could pay the bills because acting work wasn't paying a huge amount. And I loved it. And I'm one of those people who really loves to keep pushing myself. So I went through, I was with that company for nearly 15 years, working either full-time or part-time, depending on my own personal circumstances. And every couple of years, I would challenge myself and I would go into a kind of a new role within that company. So I got so much broad experience, which was fabulous. And then it was time for a change. So at 35, I packed my bags and went backpacking and had a belated kind of gap year and came to the UK and a few kind of interim roles along the way, and then fell into learning and development, which I absolutely love. And it seemed to combine lots of things that I loved and had, and were from my background. And I absolutely loved it. And then until I didn't, and it was time to change. And what was interesting is that I'd always wanted my own business. And so I came up with an idea for an online platform for the performing arts industry. And I pitched it to a startup accelerator. And they weren't so convinced that the idea was a great idea, but they liked me and my energy and enthusiasm. And so they said, come on the program and prove to us that it's a good idea. So I quit my lovely day job and on a Friday, and then on the Monday, I started in Startup Accelerator. And it was only then that I started to research whether this was really a good business idea, which I wouldn't recommend doing that. And I went to lots and lots of people and talked to lots of people, and everybody I spoke to said, wow, that's a great idea. And so I was getting all excited, except there was one major problem. That problem was that no one was prepared to pay for it. And so I suddenly realized, oh, that's not so good. But because I'd been in learning and development and I'd been, training and coaching in that role, and I also had that background as a performing arts person. And along the way, I'd done a bit more public speaking and won some public speaking competitions and that kind of thing. And so people started asking me to help them with their pitch. And I found that I was actually really good at pitching. I wasn't in the beginning, but because of my background and I worked out, a nice little formula on how to make it work, that initial elevator pitch. And so people started asking me to help them, and it grew from there. I had an opportunity where I was able to pitch in front of an audience of 600 people. And from that, I got offered the opportunity to tender for some work with the Scottish government. And it just kind of went from there. My whole last 10 years of business has really been as a result of that beginning. And it wasn't always the plan, but I've loved how it's turned out because I love what I do.
And going back to your years as an actor, did you ever see yourself being an actor on a program like Neighbours?
I was on Neighbours. They're the little. I was actually on Neighbours. So, yeah, I never. That was not what I aspired to do necessarily. But I was. My first role on TV was actually as an extra on Neighbours, and then going forward, I ended up having 3 different roles in single episodes. So I played 3 different characters over a period of I don't know, 6 or 8 months or something like that. So yeah, that's my little claim to fame.
And how did you find the transition from living in Australia and moving to the UK?
Uh, it's interesting because for a long time I felt like I had a foot in both camps. My intention was never to stay in the UK. I went traveling. I went to the United States and traveled around Europe, and then I came to the UK and was planning to work for 6 to 9 months maybe, to save some money and travel for more travels and travel back to Australia via Africa. I have an ancestry visa which enabled me to stay, and so when I was drawn to Edinburgh because of my background in performing arts, and they have a big arts festival in Edinburgh, the Edinburgh Fringe, and so I came to Edinburgh and just felt really comfortable in the city. It was like, I don't know what it was. I think if you believe in past lives, I might have lived in Scotland before, I don't know. And so I really enjoyed living here and didn't kind of feel I wanted to go back. But I always felt a bit torn. And one of my intentions when I set up my business was to enable me to live part of my life in Australia and part of my life here. That hasn't worked out. I've found that really challenging to make work for my lifestyle. So yeah, for a long time I felt like a foot was in both camps. Now I feel really Scotland's my home. Certainly at this point in time, I've been here for 18 years. So
I know what you're saying there, Mel. Of course, Edinburgh would be a small city compared to London, even Sydney and Melbourne, which have got populations of over 3 or 4 million people each. It's a small enough city in that regard, but
I love
it's a
it that
lovely
it's a
city to
small
live in.
city. That's what appeals to me. And now I actually live outside of Edinburgh in a place called North Berwick by the beach, which is really lovely.
Oh, very
Very
good.
tiny, tiny little village.
I have been to Edinburgh about 2 or 3 times. I've also been to Aberdeen, which is a completely different city altogether. It's quite, well, it's much more northern, of course, in Scotland. It's right on
Yeah.
the North Sea. It's a fishing port. It's also a location for people to move to and from the oil rigs out in the North Sea. But it's right on the border of the Highlands, so it's a great location if you want to visit the Highlands, it's Aberdeen. So that's my memory of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm traveling up there next week to deliver some training. So yeah, I like getting up there. And the Highlands are beautiful. Scotland, all of Scotland is beautiful.
That's one of my memories of visiting Scotland, was actually crossing the Forth Bridge on the train outside Queensferry.
Spectacular, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an incredible sight. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Where did the brand label Be More Red come from?
Oh, that's a whole nother story. So what happened was I was, going along in my business, but I reached a point where I don't know, sometimes this happens in life and you just feel a bit meh. I didn't really feel excited or enthusiastic about anything. In hindsight was, maybe my time of life and hitting, perimenopause or something. I don't know. But I was really, I felt quite miserable. And I couldn't, business was going well. I just bought and renovated a great place to live and bought a cute little red car, but I wasn't excited about driving it. And so I was having a conversation with Jeremy Nicholas, who you may well
I do
know
know them,
through
yeah.
PSA. And he said to me at the end of our conversation, he said, Mel, I think the answer is really simple. He said, everyone associates the color red with you. It's vibrant and energetic and positive. He said, so I think you should just put on your red lipstick and go for a drive in your red car. Just stop being blue and be more red. And those 3 words were ringing in my ears after that conversation. And within 24 hours, I bought the domain name bemorered.com and the Red Effect, and I'd started really exploring it and started writing a book on what does even being more red mean. And so I realized that red's different for everybody and everyone has a different association, but I use RED as an acronym. And it's a flexible acronym so that it gives you choice. Every moment of every day, we have a choice. We have choices on how we show up and how we respond to things or react to things. And so RED is about being intentional with your life. So being true to yourself, but also showing up as your best. And so the flexible acronym enables you to either, you in one situation, you might want to be more radiant, enchanting, and dazzling. And in another situation, you might want to be more responsive and empathetic and diplomatic. And so it's about making a conscious choice before you show up to something or before you go into that difficult conversation or before you walk into a networking event. how do I want to be? How do I want to feel? And then the other part of it is the whole program really that I've developed is around another use of that acronym: reflect, explore, and decide. So it's really about reflecting on who you are, what you want in your life, any situation. You can use this as a decision-making tool, really. Explore, so explore your options, explore, but in the program, we explore shades of red, which is an R word, an E word, and a D word, and then decide on, what it is that you want and go for it.
You mentioned there about an accelerator program that you were a participant on. How long did it take you to really define the niche offering in your business so that you could add most value to your customers? And what were the highs and lows of that
Yeah.
journey?
Great question, because I think that's one of the biggest challenges when you set up business is working out who it is that you serve, what it is that you offer. And it does take a while to refine it. And people tend to not want to niche down to such a small niche, but actually then they are trying to communicate and market to everybody, and then nobody gets it, what they do. So for me, it was interesting. And someone gave me, said to me, it's like a game of Jenga. And do you know that the game of Jenga where there's all those wooden blocks and you pile them all up and you've got to pull one out? So you've got to, and before it all falls down. So she said, it's like you kind of poking each little bit of the Jenga puzzle and seeing which one gives, and maybe following that for a little while and seeing if that's right. So it was a bit of a journey to work it out. And even now, I've specialized in pitching and presentation skills, and I was invited to write a book, The Authority Guide on Pitching Your Business. And so the pitching thing came because of being in that accelerator, in that environment. And I saw so many people who were doing themselves a disservice. They were brilliant at what they did. They had amazing ideas for their businesses, but they were really struggling to articulate that and sound really confident and credible in the way that they did that. So it started to evolve because of the environment that I was in. So then I started working with other organizations that support startups and scale up businesses. So a lot of work with Scottish Enterprise and Scottish Development International, and then other startup accelerators. And even now I still do work with different business accelerator programs. But then it started to broaden out to working with individuals, but also companies at large and small. I tend to, I love working with a company that's often in the creative industry. This is my sweet spot, where it's either a digital agency or marketing agency and that kind of thing, where they have, I don't know, maybe 50 to 100 employees, and the MD can say, we need some presentation skills, training or coaching, and they will have a conversation and they'll just do it. And I'm in there, in a few weeks' time supporting people. But I also work with bigger, larger organizations that, where it takes a little longer, the decision-making process and that sort of thing. So yeah, highs and lows, I think you asked me, didn't you, about
that journey, yeah?
Yeah, so the highs really are, for me, the biggest highs are actually helping other people to really believe in themselves. And I think even from a child, I've really, I've always been able to see people's potential and believe in them and help them believe in themselves. So that's one of the biggest things. When I'm coaching individuals, I love doing that. When I'm in a training room, I love seeing the light bulbs go on. I love seeing people really take information that they can then use away from the training room and actually enhance what they do in terms of the way that they communicate. And obviously, the performer, when I'm speaking, there's that element of, really serving an audience and being able to engage them and share information with them that will help enable them to take action again going forward. So the highs, I get highs on a regular basis just from what I do. The lows are, yeah, sometimes it's challenging in business, and sometimes I look ahead at the calendar and I think, oh gosh, that they may not be as full a diary as I would like it to be. But one of the things that I find very comforting for myself, and I know not a lot of people can't do this, but I just trust. I trust that everything will work out. And, for example, if I've got a really busy diary and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, how am I actually going to deliver all of that? I'm overwhelmed. Inevitably, I'll get a phone call or someone will message me and say, look, that workshop that you're delivering next week for us, could we postpone it for a month or so? I'm like, yes, of course you can. And it sort of opens up my diary and makes it easy. And then on the flip side, when the diary's empty, I trust that something will come in, and it always does. So I think there's that. The other challenges for me around business are always around pricing and articulating your value. So I think that's one thing that a lot of business people struggle with. And it's still, it's a work in progress. I'm always learning, always growing.
I know what you're saying there, Mel, because what you were talking about there was you have to make sure your business offering is so niched that you can really articulate the value you give to your clients and prospects. And when you can do that, then you can set your price. But there's always going to be a room for negotiation. But I would always say to people, never be under so much pressure that you want to discount your price by any more than maybe 10 or 15%, because if you do that, you're giving away all your value for nothing in return. So that's a win-lose situation. You're nearly better off saying to those kind of aggressive negotiators, I'm not the person you want to be doing business with, and just leave them to stew in their own mess. So you talk about pitching your...
Yeah, I don't very often discount. I have a range of prices because obviously I work with a lot of universities and that sort of thing. So there's a scale, in terms of the work that I do for them. They're not in the same position as a big corporate. So but it is, it's sometimes challenging, and I'm okay now. I think when I first started business, and if I sent a proposal to someone and they didn't like it was too expensive or whatever, I would take it personally. But now I'm much better at just going, you know what, that one wasn't the right one for me, and the next one will be. And it was interesting because I had two proposals out just recently, and worth reasonable amount of money, but I actually lost both of them, but for two different reasons. One said I was too expensive, and the other one said I wasn't expensive enough. And it was interesting learning for me to think, okay, that compared to someone else who had sent a proposal, and they couldn't reconcile all of my LinkedIn testimonials and all of the good things with the price that I'd quoted, and they felt more comfortable going with someone who was charging more. So it is a little challenging sometimes.
Yeah, it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation, I suppose you could say. When you talk about pitching your business, do you help people who want to, get venture capital investment into their business to pitch to a kind of a Dragon's Den type scenario, as
Yeah,
against
I do. Actually, I have worked with people who have pitched on Dragon's Den. So, but also through the startup accelerators that I work with, and the scale ups, then I have definitely worked with quite a number of companies who are pitching for funding and investment. My role is not about helping them with the details of the pitch in terms of the numbers and making sure that the business proposition is investable, but I do challenge them. And I think one of my gifts that I hadn't realized that I had is that I can help people articulate something in a really simple, easy to understand way. And a lot of the companies that I work with, some of them are, they come from science backgrounds, and I don't come from a science background. So I really have to dig down so that I understand what they're offering. And then I can actually pull it together and help them to communicate it in a way that everyone understands without sort of dumbing it right down. But so I found that I've got a gift for asking the right questions to get the right information, and then the ability just, it gets really messy. We might have 2 hours of like all over the place, and then suddenly it'll just go, and I'll just be able to go, and I'll write a 1 minute pitch or a 3 minute pitch or a 10-minute pitch, and it just, so I do. That's a very long answer to the short question of do I help pitch?
Same there. You help these people who want to pitch for funds to articulate what they're looking for in a positive way, so that when they go before venture capital investors or a Dragon's Den scenario, that they're prepared in their own mind to do that presentation, but there are other people involved who will actually help them with the nitty-gritty of the
Yes.
numbers.
Yeah,
Or
so I'll help them with the scripting, I
yeah,
suppose,
yeah,
of it, but also the confidence. So I use various techniques from my performing background and NLP exercises and various things to help them really have that confidence and self-belief, and then also help them with the actual delivery. So I think a lot of people think when they're preparing to do a big pitch or a presentation of some sort, that they just prepare what they're going to say, but they forget to prepare the other parts of themselves, their bodies, their voices, their minds, and actually thinking about the environment around them. So preparation is so much more than just that, what you say and how you say it, but actually getting yourself in the right state to be able to say it.
yeah, because it's amazing when you watch Dragon's Den or similar programs, how many people freeze
Mm.
for lack of confidence in their own message on the day. And they
Yeah.
might have a good
And those are pretty
proposition.
high stakes, nerve-wracking
Yeah,
experiences. So anyone who doesn't freeze, obviously, I think there are techniques, obviously, that you can learn to help you not freeze, but sometimes those nerves just really overcome you. But there's a great phrase, you may have heard it actually in our industry, that everybody gets butterflies, but the professionals get them to fly in formation.
oh, I know
I
what you
really
mean. Yeah,
like that
butterflies in the
visual.
stomach. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And if you think about your butterflies flying in formation, it's a nice visual to think about, okay, yeah, I can be in control of my nerves rather than my nerves being in control of me.
True. And I think preparation is so important in that regard. And don't be afraid to take on constructive feedback from, other professional people who will give you the best advice they can on the day. Because I think feedback is the food for champions. What
Hmm.
inspires you most to be successful in life?
What inspires me, did you say?
To be, yeah, most to be successful in life.
Um, I don't know. I think, life itself, life's a gift. And so what do we make of it? And for me, it's about, doing good in the world and helping other people and also making sure that I keep a roof over my head and that kind of thing. At the moment, I'm most inspired about preparing for my future because, I've suddenly got to my 50s and thought, well, I've had my own business for 10 years and I was footloose and fancy free for a long time. And I don't have children, so I'm not in a position where I'm have dependents that I have to be worried about. But actually, I want to have choices in my old age. So I'm at the moment, I'm quite driven by that need for security and preparing for my old age. Touch wood that I make it to old age.
Well, John, what's next for Mel Sherwood in terms of, adding um, more strings to your business in terms of revenue streams?
Well, the next thing is I've been talking about the red effect for nearly 7 years now, and I haven't ever written the book that I started. So the big thing is about getting that all into book form, and making sure that I do that. The other thing, when I left my job, my purpose in my business was just have an online company. It was an online platform for the performing arts industry. That was the plan. But the purpose of that was to give me freedom and flexibility of time and location, having an online business. And then the way it unfolded, I don't have an online business. I have me delivering things in person, sometimes online, but it's always, almost exchanging time for money. And so the big thing for me as well is looking at how I can, put a lot of my trainings into video format and create some online courses and that sort of thing. So they're the two things that I am focusing on over the next sort of year to 2 years.
I've heard some people saying that, developing and starting online courses is a job in itself because they underestimated the scale of work involved in creating that online course. And if
Yeah,
they see perfection
absolutely.
in a video, they have to go back and do it again because they're just perfectionists in their own right. Uh, what's been your experience of presenting an online course or even developing one, if you have one yet?
Yeah, so I have I've had drafted my online course for pitching for a long time, and I haven't ever filmed that. So I created the Red Effect as an online program during the pandemic. And so I obviously, filmed that and set that up to run. And so I think because of my performing background, I have no concerns with regard to speaking into a camera and that sort of thing. And that's what I help a lot of people with now. I think often people are a bit scared of the camera, or they feel like they need to you keep getting told to look at the camera. But I have this thing where I think instead of just looking at the camera because it's a bit cold, it's about looking through the camera. And when you look through that camera lens, there's a real different energy that comes through. So when I record things, then that's always my approach, and that's the approach that I share with my clients as well. The other thing that I have used in the past is an auto cue. So right back in my acting days, I used to deliver work for a company that made training videos. So I would actually be the presenter for those training videos for retailer outlets and that kind of thing. And I was used to using an auto cue then. And so I got used to walking and talking and looking into the camera lens and reading. And in those days, it wasn't automatic like it is now. And you actually had someone moving the words up the screen in time with your voice. But I personally, because I am a perfectionist, I like to have an auto cue when I'm developing that kind of thing. Other times I'm quite happy to just speak into the camera lens, and it's a different approach, really.
Would you go into a studio to create and record an online course? Would you do it all from your home office, for example?
Well, it depends on the type of quality I was looking at for, and the feel around it. I've set up my home office to have lighting and my background and that kind of thing. At the moment, obviously, we're using Zoom, which is a great tool, but maybe I would need to look at different equipment depending on the quality and what I was trying to produce. So possibly I'd go into a studio. Possibly I would do it from my home office.
I'm just kind of thinking in terms of auto cues and DSLR cameras. It would be a big investment for a one-off online course. So it might be a worthwhile investment paying that bit more to do it in a professional studio. That's what
Yeah, yeah. And the actual the RED Effect program that I created, I actually used two cameras, two phones actually. I had a really good quality camera on my phone, so with decent lighting you can do all sorts of things. So I used my phone, and then the other phone I used I set up with a little auto cue thing. It barely cost me any money at all. So and that was the thing, because I knew that was a trial and I wasn't prepared to invest a huge amount of money in it, but it worked really effectively.
So you live on the outskirts of Edinburgh and you have no dependents. What do you do to get out of the house and to relax and unwind?
I walk on the beach. It's literally just outside my window. I'm very, very fortunate that I live really close to beauty, and I think that's one of the things, aesthetics and harmonious surroundings, and that's really important to me. That nurtures my soul. So living here really lifts me up. So I go out for a walk quite often. That's my biggest thing. I write in my journal. I sometimes sing. I do some dancing. I like seeing friends and going out for dinner. And I'm a big fan of theatre and that sort of thing as well. So
yeah, very good. One final question for you, Mel. If you were given the opportunity to have one single request granted without question, what would that be?
I'm going really deep here, but the first thing
Oh,
that came
yeah.
to my mind was around how do we create a peaceful world? That was the first thing. And I know it sounds so cliche, world peace, but actually that is the biggest thing, I think, is how do we resolve what's going on in the world and all um the all the challenges that our world is facing and the impact that it's having on people around the world. So yeah, that's a big question to be answered. I don't know that anyone's going to, but thanks for the opportunity for getting me thinking about it.
It's quite a few people out, by the way, but so you're not alone. Don't worry about that. But this has been a fascinating conversation today, Mel. So I'd love to thank you for your time. You've given great answers to all the questions I've asked of you. And I think the audience got to know you much better as a person. So well done. I'd like to thank you for your time again.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.